All right, let's get this party going. I'm going to bring Bruce in here, everyone. Thank you for joining today. Let's see how he's doing today, Bruce.
Hey,
California today.
We're doing good. Everything's all right. Just kind of trying to get ready for that summer.
Oh, it's already here. It's hot today. Oh my God, it's like 92.
I saw that. Yeah, on the East Coast, a whole bunch of huge heat indexes and humidity as well.
Oh, actually, we got lucky on that. That's made it reasonable, but if it was humid, no.
Oh boy, no, that's brutal.
It's coming, right?
We don't get too much of that out here, so we're kind of lucky.
Right. You don't, but you get a lot of heat once in a while.
Oh, absolutely, man. That's the summer. You can wake up in the morning and rest assured you don't need to wear anything but a short shirt and t-shirt and shorts, and that's.
Yeah. Well, what's on the topic today, Bruce?
Well, I was just reviewing some stick control, little vignettes that I pull from the stick control book, or little ideas that I put together that I would just consider exercises under the heading of stick control. It's all about keeping the delivery system nice and clean, and all the moving parts oiled and lubricated, so that the shoulder is feeling good and loose, not harboring a lot of tension. Your hinge in your elbow is accessible, that your wrist moves with a sense of ease, and most importantly, which everybody always wants, and I've said this maybe time and time before, but fingers. Everybody wants single strokes, and those single strokes are probably about 0.5% of what we use, but nonetheless always good to have the whole hand developed from the shoulder down to the fingers. So in kind of response to a little bit of that idea of some stick control ideas, I want to talk about position too. And I have what I just call my stick control exercise, which is basically taken from page 10, number 5, but I reverse it. And I also throw in a little of a transitional phrase in there to move it from right side to left side, even though in the context of how it's presented, it's already doing that because there's a paradiddle. But I'm always one to kind of push it from right side to left side. So what do I mean? Let me play it in, I'll actually do this in a German position. So instead of playing, which is what would be written on number 5, I'm going to start with the 16th notes. Now I'm going to now defer to calling those 16th notes and qualify them as 32nd notes, because everything's in cut time. So whenever I was thinking of stick control, my head automatically went to the next rhythmic value. So in that case, you have 8th notes to 16th notes. I'm going to speak about them as 16th notes to 32nd notes. So I would start with the 32nd notes first, and I'm going to use the Molar method to propel the stick. And in each position, I would use that Molar. So you have the identity for Molar for me is all about the locomotive action. That means that this forearm helping to induce the push and the propelling of the stick is the key component. You can do it in French. In the French grip position, though, you wouldn't use any wrist. In the American position, and let me just sort of step back and I'll give you guys a little bit of a definition, guys and gals, I should say. When I'm here in this position of German, I'll call that my A-frame position. If I just drop down with my wrist, right there I am, palm down, essentially. I might bow out a little bit, but it's essentially a little bit more of that palm down position. So the way I would qualify or define the American position would be that I put my elbow out specifically, but that my space between my thumb and index finger would be sort of the defining centerpiece to that. So German palm down, French grip thumb up. But again, there's always little subtle attributes that help to define and bring more clarity to what that is. French grip is really coming from French timpanist grip. And so, in terms of building it for drum set, there's a few anatomical positionings that need to be adhered to. And it's not about speed. It's about the flow, the balance of the stick, and also experiencing the weight value of the stick, which in the French grip, you are basically left untethered because there's no fingers under there to impede the access of the weight of the stick. you let that stick just drop forward over your index finger, and you feel that value of roughly that 2/3 of the weight versus the 1/3 of the weight. So another way to get to the American position, and this is challenging, if I'm in my German position, and now I put my elbows out, which is one of the key components to getting American singles. If you kind of let them drop and sit in here, you don't get the full range of support from shoulder down to elbow and through the forearm. And that's key, man. That stability to push against is what we're after. That is such a key, important part. So back to my continued theme here. When I drop now and I've got my elbow out, I keep that A-frame position. So a lot of my students, when they first do this exercise, they would be sitting with their shoulders relaxed, sitting, or their elbows sitting loosely under their shoulders. And then when I say, well, put your elbows out, what happens is they do that. That changes the position and the angle of the stick. That's not going to be conducive to playing. So we want to get that A-frame so that when you drop right to the center of the pad. So now that I've rolled or pushed my elbows out, my forearm is slightly rolled a little bit just by positioning. And if I just let my wrist drop, I'm basically in that position now. And I can access the hinge in my wrist to make that clean turn. So those positions are all key. So in the American position, again, that would take a little bit of some French sensibilities, the elbows being out, and also the non-usage of wrist when I'm doing single strokes or a Molar push. And again, in these French and American positions, the Molar push in a slower fashion, the illusion would be that you think you're using your fingers, or you would see me and think I'm using my fingers, but my fingers are just there on the underside of the stick, and I'm not really pumping it along. As I get faster, though, my fingers would be engaged. And one thing I want to put forward is that positioning of support. I just want to put a visual component to that. I'll leave the pad down. I was going to play traditional grip for a second, but if you ever think of Buddy Rich and how he's got that raise of the forearm. Well, in his case, he really sits a lot at times in the shoulder when he gets that happening. And you could do that. You just want to be able to let the shoulder drop and not get stuck there. But what's my point? That support value, sitting on top of the stick. So, all right. So German now. Let's go back and revisit what I was going to say about the reverse version of number 5. My notation would be such that I would put 30-second notes to 16th notes, 30-second notes to 16th notes. That would be one bar, and that would be played this way. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll do that 3 times. 2, 3, and then the last bar, 3 groups of 30-second notes with a single paradiddle, and then that brings me to start the whole sequence with the left-hand lead. And the speed factor is not the utmost. The control factor is. I want to get a nice, dense stroke out of all my notes so that if I was playing it even a little bit slower, like and then I'd go to the left side. So speed, of course, is relative to each individual. My biggest statement regarding that is it's not about speed, it's about control. So if you have good control with what you're doing, that will lead you to an element of maybe pushing your envelope of speed. But at the end of the day, it's really about, good solid control. You're speaking a language, so you want to have control over your sticks to make statements or phrases and stuff like that. It's not about like wowing everybody all the time. All right, so here is a question. Curious to hear Bruce's words, why he worked with me, and I'm guessing other students for around 6 months, only French grip before working in German. What is his reasoning for that? Well, first and foremost, sound and rhythm drumming school. Well, I'm not sure who that is, but okay, here's my answer to that.
I think that's Clifford.
Oh, okay, Clifford. Oh, okay. Sorry, Cliff. Why did I work in the French grip? Because what we want to do is, again, initiate a nimbleness to the stick being in the hand. Hi, Clifford. I got you now. feeling the weight value of the stick. And the other identifiable quality that is really the ultimate goal is to feel the ability and looseness to be able to walk in and out of those different positions. The drum set being a multi-surfaced instrument, and take that where you will, because you can put 8 toms and 8 cymbals and 3 bass drums, or you could have what I have, a classic just 4-piece kit. You want to be able to get around to that kit easily. The path of least resistance to get from the snare drum to the floor tom would be to roll out and fall into a French grip position. And when you go through the French grip, you want to maintain a certain sense of reflexiveness to support the value of the stick. So if I just roll out and I go into a cradle position, there's a couple of issues with that tonally, and also how you can pursue a value of impact and bounce. So there's like, anytime you hit something, you do have some kind of an energy. But on a floor tom, not like on a pad or a snare drum or a small tom or a cymbal, the texture of the floor tom being usually lower tuned, you're not going to get a lot of give. It's going to be boom, 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 boom. So when we impact that stick to the pad, like a timpani, we want to give with that. Now, timpani, again, will have a little bit more give than a floor tom. But the idea is to get the sound out of the drum and not hit into the drum. So the French grip reflexes take a while to just sort of acclimate to. And these days, now, Clifford, you studied with me a while back, I've got a little bit more of a push and pull to kind of bridge those systems together a little quicker. I still have, a certain program of building up the French grip and identifying certain parts of our anatomy, whether it's, like I said, the elbow being out in French grip is very important to access the forearm, so you can have a nice, easy rotation when you're playing open eighth notes. That's just one part of the mechanism. But also the nimbleness of feeling the molar. You might want to sit in a fast eighth note pattern in a French grip. On the ride cymbal, it feels pretty good. On the hi-hat, it does too. Now, there's another couple of, that brings up a whole other topic. But when you hit the hi-hat and you're getting shoulder on the stick, you got to, again, produce or take the energy and extract it and kind of expand it. So, there's like this element of this follow through with your forearm to give with the bounce of the stick. I'm letting the stick as if it was a free entity. Let's say there was a little rubber ball on the stick tip, throwing it down to the pad. I want to follow that bounce vertically and make sure that I get a good clean line out of that. That just makes things move easily. It makes things bounce, and you get a better, let's say, access to the energy that you're after. You can hit and you can punch, but I'll always put this question or pose this question, which is, what's the difference if you don't know the difference? Until you experience the difference, you're not really qualified to make the analysis of what's going on. And so I can tell you time and time again, I have, hundreds of students through the years, or maybe even thousands, I don't even know, but that they've made huge progress, and they understand, like I've had several guys go like, I don't play French grip. And then all of a sudden, 3 months into it, they're like, everything I'm doing is kind of this French grip related thing. I don't want to make always literal translations right off the bat. I want to make conceptual transitions, conceptual tweaks. In other words, if you're getting used to feeling the weight of the stick, that element is going to infiltrate and permeate you in a German or American or whatever position you would kind of find yourself in. Many people sit more in one position, and they don't have the flexibility to open that up. So in terms of the building block for why French grip, again, you can feel the weight and the natural swing of the stick when you toss it up in the air. Super easy. Now, the mechanism on the inside, that's a whole other piece of work, because there are certain pressure points and positions and placements that through my more detailed exercises, those will bring about a really firm understanding of what's going on. So, and I don't necessarily get too involved in those in this forum, because it's too much. There's too many little intricacies to that. So, and if you do want the detail, then you come to me directly, and I will push the hell out of your hands to develop them. I just got a nice testimonial from one of my students in look kind of north of Atlanta in Georgia. What a great guy. And he is just making tons of progress, and amazed at his age. He's in his early to mid 50s or so. So those who say, oh, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, I say, oh yeah, come on over here. Now, and if you're a younger guy and you want to get those things set up so you have a good, solid foundation for tracking for a lifetime, then get over here as well. I'm going to say, is that Darrell? I'm going to just assume Darrell.
Daryl, can you demonstrate doubles in all those groups?
Yeah. Okay, so if I'm going to do doubles in the French grip, I'm not going to go for speed. There's nothing about speed. But here is one of my first exercises that I would utilize. To demonstrate the motion, so the different elements, we need downstrokes, we need upstrokes, we need tap strokes. And so I'm just going to play a stream of double strokes in eighth note triplets. And I'm going to have my down, up, double, down, up. So I'm just, for right now, I'm going to say down to qualify that for this exercise, but it means two strokes. I don't want to come down hard and get the first stroke to blast out and diminish the second stroke. I want to bring a nice, even temperament to everything that's being played, every double stroke. So even on my down strokes, I don't have an accent. 1, 2, 3, and lead 4, and lead 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Okay, so that's a double stroke there. Now, would I do that at a fast speed? No. I would go to one of my next gears. If you're going to play doubles faster, I generally would talk about doubles coming from a wristed position. Now, every double stroke presentation would have some choreography to it, and it depends on the context. If it's a 9-stroke roll, I could do it a couple of different ways. One way would be down, tap, up, tap, down. And again, I'm not going to hit the pad with excessive force. I could also just stay on the pad and play it tap, tap, up, tap, down. And inside that, there's always going to be an upstroke to downstroke to give me the punctuation at the end of the roll. What's the punctuation? It could be a period or an exclamation point. If it's an accent, it's going to be, if it's not, it's just going to be ending the roll with a little bit of a punctuation mark to give the outline and the definition to that roll. In the American, that's going to be more German-esque. I'm going to use those wrists, and that's just a rolling out. That's a comfort zone that I would use quite a bit in many of the things that I would do for, practicing on the pad. I don't really think about it. It just kind of developed. But if I want to get truly on the inside of the hand, and I want to feel a little bit more of that push and pull and the grab on the inside, then the direct line, the vertical line that you can create palm down, is a better advantage. And so these are the things, again, you can talk about it in theory and go, hey, yeah, I got it. But everybody's body has been built to produce a certain level of execution to, conduct business when you're playing music. You don't think, or you shouldn't think, you're just playing. So those reflexes have been built up to serve up the music, or they go on like a little computer on in your brain. Drums, music, okay, and you just do what you do. I work meticulously on creating these alternative exercises to sit on the pad and really be mindful of what's going on, which will permeate. And again, it's not always a literal translation at first. I work like a dog to get those literal translations, or let's say, the visual aspect of it to really step up. And that's forever. That never changes. Everybody thinks, I just do a little practice and I'll get my chops going for a year. Yeah. Ask guys like Steve Smith or Dave Weckl. They are constantly in a maintenance or a growth level of practice. Look at Steve Smith, how he has elevated his playing for the last, 35 or so years after the original journey jaunt that he did. And Weckl would be the same. Many other guys. I just, my students, I'll just say, I've got some guys who play in bands that we would know and some who don't. David Garibaldi studied with me for a little over 2 years. That's a band that everybody should know, one of the more iconic bands of all time. And, when he hit with me, that was starting in about August of 2017 till late 2019, or maybe just the very first month of 2020. And that was, I got to say, you know, that's a guy who, let's see, he would have been like 70 something, 71. I got to think about the math. If he's born in 46, yeah, he would have been like 70 going on 71 when he started. Okay, you go, what does he have to learn? He, you know, innovated this whole great funk system of playing. He wants to move and get his smoothness to his delivery up like everybody else. You know, you got sometimes some bumps in the road you need to repair. So anyway, doubles here in a more, let's say, relaxed kind of letting my rotation, my forearm kind of just sit out a little bit, would be more into the wristed position. So again, if I'm playing rolls, you know, again, it's always context. I got to say context, context, context. What about traditional grip doubles? Oh, okay, good question. Traditional grip doubles. If I play them slower, I'm going to sit in a more cradled position so that I can, you know, live with the double a little easier. So that's what I just call thumb to cradle. And the cradle is produced by letting the stick sit nested between the index and ring finger, and the ring finger supported with the pinky. So that's kind of these guys are a team here. And if I went faster, I'd get that out of the way, and it would just be a pull from the index finger. The trigger finger would take over. Again, I got to say that tempo or context is going to bring a little bit more clarity. So, you know, in terms of what I do exercise-wise, I have a whole bunch of different little stomping grounds to hang in to kind of push you through that. So you get to live in that world for a bit, kind of work it through, feel what's going on. And of course, my observation skills and how I am able to assess what's happening and push you into the right direction. And don't think that the Zoom medium is a hindrance. It's not. My observation skills are spot on. I have many people who are surprised that I can see the little details. I can see if somebody's index finger comes off when they're playing at a clip, not super fast, but at a good clip. Even if it was fast, I could see that. But again, when we're doing my exercises, there's an element of slow and flow to build up the relationship with how things move. And the more you do that, you build into accessing a better sense of control for building up speed. So anyway, I hope that sort of gives you a little color and imagination with what you can do in the traditional for the rolls. Let me go back to my theme, though, of my stick control exercise. So I'm going to do this. I did it in German. Let me just do a quick run of it. So it's a full 8 bar. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So there's the German version, palm down. I'll just come to the side here just to demonstrate one little thought, that there's a few variables to the molar delivery. So again, I want my hand to be set up to be able to modulate a little bit reflexively. So I could play a more open bounce molar, which would be so that's a larger bounce. And then I could sit a little bit more in the middle. And that means that my ring and pinky finger are acting as a little bit of a restraining or resistance factor to how much pivot I get out of the stick. So you want to develop the ring and pinky finger and their role in being leadership to how the stick is moving inside the hand. And you could sit inside the hand, which would be so my stroke now on the down is also a duality of an inhale. And that's, I would always build that anyway, that element of pop, bring the stick into the hand. Just like, you know, any percussion instrument, bass drum, concert bass drum, boom, off the drum, timpani, off the drum. You know, if you try to hit and dig into the cymbal, you're not going to get a good tone. If you try to hit into the drum like that, you're not going to get a good tone. So constructing good delivery systems for the element of acoustics and bringing about a relationship with the resonant quality and how your bone density matches with the resonant quality of your stick, absolutely imperative if you want good tone. If you don't, all right, that's okay. I'm fine with that. You can get away with that. You'll get some kind of a tone, but you can actually change and get even a bigger density and nicer sound. Remember this, everybody who's talked about John Bonham. Some people talk correctly and say, yeah, he played the drums with a sound. Yes, he did. He got a very magnificent sound. He did not play hard. He didn't hit the drum. You never see him lifting up his arm here and whacking the crap out of the drum. He knew how to get the sound out of the instrument. It was all about, you know, the ambient miking of the room to be able to build up the sound that he became famous for. There's also a balance in terms of how he's striking the instrument. You know, not one instrument is standing above the other, like the bass drum's not overpowering the snare drum, and etc. So that's a guy who just really intuitively either had it or he got good direction from somebody somewhere along the line. I always say that in his early formulative days, he did have direction, but maybe on the road as a young guy and being able to travel and mixing it up with other drummers when they were breaking in, because they were doing not headlining gigs that they, you know, became noted to do later on, but they could have done a gig at the Fillmore West and Buddy Rich could have been on the stage doing a double bill. That's how those things were booked back then. You had a variety of different groups. There's the famous, I think it's Fillmore East with Santana and Miles. No, was it Santana and Miles? No, Grateful Dead and Miles. That's what it was. You know, you go, whoa, that's quite a lineup. Anyway, what's the point is that we want to understand and build up this whole identity of how things move and how you can move with the stick and not take in the shock. You take the shock into your arm, your wrists, you're going to have a short shelf life. So back to let's go to the French now. I'll do that one. Yeah, because that's a good one. That's got a nice density. When you do the French grip approach of this exercise, I need to first assist somebody to understand what are the attributes of getting the French molar. So there's, you know, the delivery system, letting that stick kind of pitch forward over your index finger. And again, feel the bounce of the stick. You want your forearm to give a little bit, but you also want to be mindful of where you are on the sweet spot of the stick tip. You don't want to get way over the tip. That's not going to be helpful. So you got to sit within a certain level or a certain plane of or rotation of locomotive action to produce, you know, those elements that we're after tonally, as well as manipulating the stick to get the drive or the momentum going. So here's the French version, and I'll just lay back a little bit, but listen to the density that you get out of the stick tips. Nice and direct to the tip. Okay, so once you know that, you start to feel that, that's going to change even what you do in another position. They will sound different because listen to the German sound. Back to the French. And the American, somewhere in the middle. It's got a little bit of both of those. It's got a little bit of the richness of the French, and it's got a little bit more of that kind of, you know, your hand sitting over that. Remember, as you're holding the stick, you are basically, I always say, you know, it's like you're playing claves. If I choke that stick, that's not helpful. So let that stick sit in the hand. And again, that's not easy because you have to find how much pressure to put around the stick, where the stick can sit, and allow certain things to open up. For example, this gap here, space for acoustic resonant. If you start to pinch down here, you're going to basically choke the tonality of the stick. It also closes down the access to the back of the hand, which is really fundamental to what I'm doing. It's all about the back of the hand. I don't want to pinch in the front. That allows you the freedom to be able to play, you know, paradiddle diddle diddles like nice and easy with a nice, easy push when I get up to here. Okay, another component would be to come up towards the stick tip a little bit to allow for the inhibiting of the bounce of the stick so it doesn't get in your way. So all those little guys, man, there's just great little calisthenics to work on. So the American now basically taking those elbows and coming out a little bit, letting that centerpiece of your position be the space between your thumb and index finger. I'm not going to say that in the single version that everything's going to come in, because you're going to let that stick kind of come in, and you will come into a little bit of that German cradle position. I don't do that in French because that's going to negate any of the balance that I pursue here. So in the American position for this exercise, and as you're lifting for your paradiddles, which you should be lifting on the E of the paradiddle, that is how the paradiddle would be built. Down, up, down, up, down, up. Okay, so in that American, you have that access also to a little bit of the drop of the wrist. There's a threshold. You can't over-release the stick. It'll screw up the cycle of momentum and the locomotive action you're after if you kind of let that stick go too much. So loose is good. I want everybody to be loose, but you also have to fine-tune in the context of looseness where things sit. So you have a good density and a good aspect of how that works, and it doesn't muck up the motion. If you're going and you're releasing way here, way too much release. That's too much, too much. You probably set about a 30-degree slope forward. If this is, let's see, I'm looking backwards in the camera. So if that's 0 degrees with the left stick, let's straighten that up. There we go. It's about 30 degrees. I can't see so well because it's backwards. It's messing my head up a little bit. All right, so other items in stick control that I would use that would be sort of smaller versions of this one is, and I got the book here, just make sure I got the right reference point. But if you go to page 31, and I'll just go straight to 20, which one is again? 29. 29 is a good one. So those are using what I just would say a 5-stroke rough. Essentially, you're going. So it's in 3/8 time. I'll just do 25 just to start the conversation. And that would be 1 and 2 and 3. So I'm going to count those as, again, we're in 3/8. 16th notes would be counted like 8th notes. 32nd notes would be counted as 16th notes. So it'll be 1 and 2 and 3 and a 1 and 2 and 3 and a 1 and 2 and 3 and a 1. So a little bit faster. Just watch how my forearms are giving with the 32nd notes to slide in to the downbeat. All right, so the good one, though, is 29. Sorry, I'm losing my mind here. Because there's a paradiddle, so you can work it from left to right side. So you'd have paradiddle, paradiddle. And those little items, again, to fire up the workings or the inner workings of the hand are great. Now, there's a little building block process that I would use to make that stroke more efficient, more effective. And I know everybody wants the quick answer and they want the magic pill. But the magic pill is get proper direction and practice, and then you will achieve results. There's no instant fix to anything. Again, if you have been with sticks in your hand for 10 to 15, 20, 25, 30, 35 years, you've built up habits and positionings that are not going to necessarily be easily changed in 1 second or one thought. You might accept the idea of the change. In other words, you're ready for it. You go, yeah, I'm ready for change. I can do that. But the direction and the building block process to put it on track so that you physically make changes is what we're after. And that is dedication. That's where my coaching, my observation skills, and my ideas of movement come to play. You'd be hard pressed to see anything, in my case, without a building block. Everything that I do has got like some major steps. As Freddie Gruber would put it in his Freddiness, he would say, it's like building an erector set, man. And so true. If you just sit back, you can get caught up in the shuck and jive of a lot of Instagram, and it's all good. It's all motivational. It builds enthusiasm, and it also builds a little despair when you see somebody do something so marvelous and you go, I can't do that. Well, we don't need to do what that guy did. You need to fine tune what you need to do for music. If you're drumming just a drum, that's another element. A lot of people do that. They don't really get out and play. That's say I'm not going to define that as bad, good, or indifferent. I'm just going to say, drums are about music, and facilitating the body to engage in music. That's another level of development. That's a conversation set of skills to be able to communicate and work with other people. That's a little bit different. You can play the records, and that's really fun and engaging, and that might be a very satiating element of what you do, and I honor that absolutely, because not everybody has the time to get out and play gigs. In my case, I did thousands of gigs and hundreds of sessions to that point to get to here, and always worked. And then later on at I was always teaching, but at about the age of 53, 54, I started to step back, and my gigging schedule changed, and my teaching, which was already on pretty good track, just started to be more of the focus. And so, I'm not saying everybody has to do it the way I did it, but that's my path. I did it that way. And so now I'm all about education. I'm trying to pass on all the skill set that got me through a lot of cool gigs and opportunities to play with a lot of cool people, and, kind of work in a industry that is, I don't know how to define it anymore, but to work in that industry, pretty cool. All right. So any other questions? Just checking in there. Jeffrey, anything happening in there or no?
No, we're good right now. We're caught up for the most part. We've got some good eyes, but if you guys want to get some questions in, please do. We got plenty of space for you. Jump on in. There's no wrong question.
yeah, exactly. Jump in. So, going on forward with like some other stick control ideas, there's one thing that I laid out more recently with the Molar method, and that's going back to page 5, the very first page that everybody gets involved in, and looking at number 9, 10, 11, and 12, and facilitating that with the Molar delivery system. For me, everything is built on the down and up strokes. What comes down had to start coming up to deliver that down. You can play down here and play everything here, but there's always a lift and a drop into what you want to play. The more you can consume an identity of the space value and the choreographing of how things dance, the better off you're going to be. It's going to also facilitate a more rhythmic mode to what you want to do, because now you're sitting in that upstroke is not arbitrary. That's a note in time. That would be the and one. And inside that and, we want to lengthen that space to know, well, how high do I lift to get my downstroke? That takes a moment to sort of get yourself rooted. Everybody wants to hit. Everybody wants to punch and push. We can lift and drop. And letting go is counterintuitive for drummers. So you want to be able to formulate a relationship with that. So just a simple idea. If I take number 9 on page 5, I'm going to do it 2 ways, but I'm going to do it the more, let's say the first way would be, that's pretty reasonable. So it's right, left. I'm going to play my right as a Molar delivery. So I'm going to speak out my way of putting a directive, and it would be down, up, and I say to up because that second note is leading into the final up. And so I don't want to have to say up. I'll just kind of bleed into it. And in other situations, I might let the sit on the pad before I put it into an up if it's a double or triple stroke, depending upon what I'm doing. But so we've got down, up, down, up, down, up. Now I've got to fill in with the left hand. When I do the left hand, I don't want to just sit wimpily, if that's a word, on the pad and just get a little noodly tap, tap, tap. I do want to open up my wrist stroke to bring value that is somewhat equal to my right strokes. So let's see. So that's, again, just 3-note. That's a Molar move. It's got a gap. It's not 3 in a row in the way that we would play triplets, but it's 3 in a row, but there's a space to let the left hand fall into that gap. Now, there's also an identity of what I call the reverse Molar, coming off the pad and lifting in. And that's a little tricky because that's got a little bit of a different move. I mean, it's got just some inside the hand quality to live and breathe with the stick to bring it into the hand from a lower profile position. So I'm going to take the right, 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 left, and the first grouping I'll play down, and the second grouping I'll come into the hand and raise up and get my what do you like to say? My recoiling to deliver the next downbeat. So it's looking like this. Now that's just living again with the elements or the components that we utilize down and up, and just bringing a little more depth to the motion and efficiency. And again, it really it's about context, but this is a practice. We're talking kind of stick control exercises to build up the relationship of hand, stick, how things move. So with that, let me go and just push forward to number 11. Number 11, okay, here's a question. One more question, please. If we start with an upstroke, how does that change the dynamics? If we start with an upstroke, you can get an accent on the up, you can get an accent on the down. You can get a touch on the up, you can get a touch on the down. I always say, don't let the downstroke sucker punch you in to having to produce an accent or a bigger note. You can play. That's down, tap, up, tap, down, tap, up, tap, down, tap, up, tap, down, tap, up. I'll make it into rolls. There was no, at any point, like anything that stand out that's accented. You know, it's not, I don't want that. I mean, I may, again, there's some literature that I use that has accents on the down or on the beginning of the roll. So we do want to produce that element as well. But you can get a nice fat accent on an upstroke, which is not easy because there's a little bit, again, working on the inside of the hand, a timing element. I can demonstrate this. If I just play Molar eighth notes in German position, now I'm purposely going to get a little bit more punch on my downstroke, but listen to the upstroke. I'm just letting my wrist drop, stick tip, sweet spot of the stick tip, drop into the pad, and lifting all at the same time. And that upstroke is still a pretty nice fat sound, whether it's in French or traditional. That's a quality that you can bring into the hand. But again, it just takes some proper guidance to put it into perspective, exercises that will build up a relationship with how that moves. And voila, you have the answer to your question. Thank you for the ideas. I have a question for the upstroke. The lift, does it depend on the bounce? No. You can lift like drive from the right finger. There's no, whoop, there you go. Now, I could also lift with a double. I can lift with a triple. I have to modulate how quickly I lift off the pad, because if I do a triple, I don't want to go and go beyond the stick tip or the sweet spot of the stick tip to the tip of the tip. That's not going to produce a tone. So there's an element of like refining your locomotive value of movement inside what you're doing. So let me go now to number 11. Number 11 has a few different things that I would put in there, but it's going to have the three left hands sitting with what I would call a bounce, close. So that's wrist driven. I'm still, because I'm leading with the right hand, going to center my right hand on the delivery system of the up and down. If I did it slow, I could go da 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 down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Get a little bit away from that tempo. It gets kind of clumsy if I'm going. So because it's one note, it's very defined as to what we're doing. I'm going to make a more efficient usage of my right hand lead, and I'm going to play down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Much more effective. You could also go into a mode of, hey man, I want to wrist it. So you could do a full bounce, or what I call a pickup, just from the wrist. You could do it with a drop and a turn. Okay, the turn will actually have also a note attached to it, because you can do drops and turns without the stroke of the stick being impacting the pad on your backstroke. And I would do that too in other settings. But for this example, it would be down, up, down, turn, down, turn, down, turn, down, turn. But my bigger picture for this was to really work on the element of the Molar delivery system, so that every time you lift and drop, that this inner working is producing the flow, the fluidity of what you want. If there are kinks in the hardware, in the elbow, tension in the bicep, a non-compliant wrist, finger positions that let the stick bow way out here, not happening. Again, I say those are usable. You can do those little subtleties and nuance and stuff like that, but we want to stray away from that and build up a foundation of really understanding the more qualitative way of movement, producing a sound, making the hand, or maximizing the efficiency of the hand. And then, whatever comes up on the gig. I mean, today's a t-shirt and shorts day, but last week I did my first gig on last Sunday, first gig since March 2020. And, that's a slacks and shirt gig. You know what I mean? It's, what to wear. And then other gigs you do, you might have like a hotel gig and it's a suit and a tie, or maybe it's a tuxedo. You know what to do. So drumistically, we want to build up those sensibilities so that on a jazz gig, this open, bouncy ride cymbal approach that I would use to build up a relationship with the swinging stick and feel the value of the weight of the stick is not usable for every single style of jazz. Even in the same tempo range, you might find in a big band that might be a little bit too much swing of the stick, and the horn players grab you by the neck and pull you 3 bars behind them. And then you're in another time zone. Not good. So all those attributes opening up the swing is to calibrate the inside of the hand and feel the stick have a little bit more mobility. If you're playing the ride cymbal with a tight hand and go ding, ding, da, ding, ding, da, ding, that's not helpful. You're going to feel all that vibration in here. And so we want to extend your shelf life. That's the whole point. So with the number 11, let me just play that, and we'll use the Molar element of it. And I'm just going to default right away to my up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And I can combine number 9 and 11, or number 10 and 12, and work the left hand as well. Let's do 10 and 12. So I'm going to have down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. That's a good one. And then I could reverse it. I could start with number 12 as my first grouping, down, up, down, up. So those, little lifts and drops are very functional for some kind of extended ghost note values that you want to put on the snare drum, like do 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 ba, e and a 2, kind of leading into your backbeat. When I met Jojo Mayer back in 1994, I was hung with him as we say friends for quite some time. We used to talk pretty regularly and hung out several times. He was doing that stuff back in the 90s, man, 94 when I met him, and well executed, brilliant, and very well thought out, masterful. And I went, whoa, that's pretty cool. And I just started to look at that. I had those ideas, but his visualization and actually crystallizing it was like, aha, that's, and of course, woo, he built that whole thing up into a level that I think very few people can attain that. I mean, you can if you're practicing diligently, but he's one of the hardest working men in show business, I would say, and a very thoughtful guy. So those are like elements of stick control. Just an off the cuff thing that I work on just for double strokes. And somebody had asked me to demonstrate doubles on the different positions. But in the German position, I have my element of what I call tap strokes to doubles. So I'm just going to play like my 8th note version of it. So it's 8th notes to 16th notes. The reason I do the doubles in 16th notes and not thinking in more of the 32nd note way that we would usually interpret our rolls for 5 strokes, 7 strokes, 9 strokes, 17s, and all that stuff, is that I want to be able to conduct a relationship of counting every single note. And I want to breathe in to feeling every 16th note. So that if I go, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1, I have a design of tracking mechanism that can follow every stroke, every single stroke, and there's a labeling to every stroke. If I do it as 32nd notes and I'm going 1 E and 2 E and well, I know how it sounds and feels now, but in the beginning stages, if I'm sort of like there's 2 strokes to each count, that second stroke may get a little bit lost in its dynamic push. And we don't need to snap those sticks. A lot of guys will say, yeah, play the second double into the hand. I understand the idea behind that, but if you set the hand up right, you can get that to sit in your hand easily. Hi, Bruce. I've experimented with playing the first note of the shuffle, the note of the beat, with an upstroke when I use the French grip on the ride cymbal. Do you think that's worth working on? Absolutely. Yeah. If I'm playing like, now for the jazz ride cymbal pattern, I would use the upstroke on the 1 and 3 and falling on the 2 and the 4. In a more shuffle context, I'm less, if I do, that, and I'm saying, well, my thumb's up, but my fingers are working a little bit more in what I would just call the German method because I'm using a little bit more of that pull into the hand. Yes, all my shuffles would be built on the pull of the stick into the hand on the downbeats or the numbers. So in other words, if I play a shuffle, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So my numbers are coming into my hand. And I got to tell you, before I even studied with Freddie Gruber and before I was thinking about anything, that was something I noticed when I was playing shuffles, playing like, trying to think, one tune would be Can't Get Enough of Your Love by Bad Company. I'm trying to think what other shuffles. Maybe we were doing what's that tune? Oh man. It's by Grand Funk, but I can't think of the name. It's like I don't need a whole lot of money. That one. And so that's pulling in on the 1, 2, 3, 4 and letting that stick dance into the hand. There was something about that. I have a very, very keen visual memory of that and playing that and kind of seeing that in a way that I couldn't describe or talk about when I was a kid. Those kind of things, that you get and you go, oh, yeah, I got it. That's where we want everything to sit technically. We don't want to be thinking too much about that on the job. Oh, yes, on the pad, in our practice, that's where we get to formulate the changes we're looking to produce on the gigs. Or in the recording session, so that you have the goods to come up with and maintain a good level and a good, let's say, a level of that's going to be engaging for the other musicians where they go, hey, we're going to call you back for the job. Not, hey, I'll see you guys later. And that's the last time you hear from these guys. You want to be able to maintain good, solid musical relationships and connections. So. Sorry, Bruce.
I'm trying to figure out. I think what he's saying here is, sorry, but when you use the molar, I think he's saying, do you use the finger or lift only with the stick rebound?
Do I lift with the stick? Well, there's always a rebound, but there is an element where I can sit inside the hand. So if that's more the case, then I'll just demonstrate that quickly, and then we'll go back to that other question that I just saw for a second. If I go strike, drop up, there's no bounce there, really. I mean, yes, there's energy there, but I'm not working with like the more locomotive action of this. And in this case, I'm just living with the bounces and kind of dragging them up. That's nice and bouncy. That's a good place to sit. But you could also sit inside the hand. So I'll just do it in the 3-note context because I can break it down and label each note nicely. Strike, drop, up, strike, drop, up, strike, drop, up, strike, drop. So when I come into the pad, I suck that stick in. I take that impact into my hand. Beat 2 is clearly just letting go. And I'll say this time and time again. I already said it. It's counterintuitive for drummers to let go with a good, solid delivery. And I'm just coming up from that low profile position and just bringing the stick up again to reboot my downstroke delivery. So what was that question that I just saw, Jeffrey, that I missed there? This guy put something out with Molar, the last question. No, that one I was getting to.
Yeah, no, that's the one we were talking about with the shuffle.
Yeah, that's the shuffle. But there was one that came after that I thought I saw that came up.
No, I don't see any.
Okay. All right. Well, sorry. If there's another question, please throw it out. I got a few minutes left before we pack it up and go. And thanks everybody for who's ever here to engage. I appreciate that. If you're not a subscriber to the YouTube channel, please go ahead and do that. Jeffrey and I have been sort of slowly masterminding this more regular forum. And, if you are signed up, you'll get hopefully some kind of notification when it's happening. I'm trying to do it more regularly. And, it's all about trying to put into perspective, I think, some plans of action, some conceptual growth to change what you do and not get caught up into the weeds of Instagram, YouTube, and kind of find yourself looking at 75 videos rather than focusing on things that are more practical to allow for the changes that you might be seeking. Again, those changes don't come, in 1 second. As I used to always say, I still say it. Nothing comes from doing nothing. You got to do something, and you got to kind of sit in a lane of development so that you can really access what it is. Everybody wants a quick fix. So did I when I was a kid. But I found out, looking back now, and I'm wise enough to know that the best thing I did was stay on my path, marching forward, keeping sticks in my hand. And fortunately, I was very lucky that I started very young with the likes of Freddie. And, he put me on a pretty good path that opened up my hands and a lot of ideas for concept. Now, I already had a lot of ideas coming into that because that was my nature anyway. That was the kind of guy I was. But it helped to put that. It was also a pain in the ass, and it did maybe that wasn't the most direct line. You never know. But you can't go back and redo your lines. But for growth and for movement, man, the best. Hey, what strokes do you recommend we start working on when we're starting this? Well, I think, for my stick control exercise, I would probably sit in more of the German to get the essence of the Molar, because that's something that you're going to use in every capacity. Again, going back to a Paradiddle, that's Molar. So I'll do my quick demonstration where I just put the left hand on a different pad and watch my right hand or watch my left hand. That's a locomotive action. Of course, it's not seamless 4 notes in a row, but it's got all those movements, the locomotive action that you want to get together. Okay, so you got to get like the hand constructed, because if you don't have the certain amount of placement inside thumb and index finger and how the fingers work and drawing the thumb in and those little attributes that, again, I do very detailed little setups for those to help to slowly take what your hand looks like and reshape it like a piece of clay. Just putting enough water on there and just grooming it to all of a sudden you go, hey, my hand looks different. The stick sits differently in my hand. Again, I could say, hey, just hold the stick like that. Hold the stick like that. Your hand may not comply. You may go, oh, I'll hold the stick like that, right? Because you're conditioned to cradle those fingers around the stick and have a little bit more tension. Or it might be sometimes too loose. It depends. I've had guys who've got such a loose grip that they play on the cymbal. It sounds like spaghetti al dente. Not good. Want to have a little more density. So I would probably sit a little bit more, in that German version to kind of start with those exercises. What are your thoughts about having the thumb more active in the traditional grip and not so much index finger. Well, yeah, that works for slower things, but I'd still want to have a more efficient hand. So if I'm only using the thumb, that's got a limitation. If I'm doing doubles with the thumb, that seems less dense and feels a little flimsier than being able to use the index finger to draw the stick into the double. But for slower, that index finger, not really a necessity. All right, so I hope that answers. I'll leave you with this. Here's a little stick control exercise you might want to mess around with. It's very short, but I'm going to do eighth note triplet, single paradiddle, and then the outline would be like quarter note triplets, single paradiddles, but it would really be, what would that be? 16th note triplets, right? So if I'm going 1 and lead 2 and lead 3 and lead 4 and lead. Okay, so that's like just a 2-bar phrase. I would probably extend it. I just threw it out quickly. I was working on that this week, just kind of messing around. But I would do it more probably in 3 bars of the 8th note triplets and finish off as those. Again, I'm going to say the outline of the single paradiddle is quarter note triplets. So it'd be, I can't really count that out. I'd have to show you a little text for that. But here we go. I'll do it in 3 bars of the single paradiddle and 8th note triplets, and then I'll cap it off with the 16th notes triplets. So we got 1 and 2 and lead 3 and lead 4 and lead 2, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And that's a good one. Again, there's a million different little calisthenics that I have. And more importantly, I have like really good calisthenics that are more for the positioning, that are not as grinding as something like that, that kind of help stabilize and keep your positions and honor the stick inside the hand and all that good stuff. So, all right. So I'm going to take it home here and say thank you, everybody, for hanging out. Thank you, Jeffrey, for helping me host this. And thank you, Henry. Thank you, Ramon. Yep. Ramon, if you don't know Ramon, he's got that push-pull system thing. It's off the hook. It's at a level that I think if we practice 10 years, maybe we'll achieve that. So anyway, thank you, guys. Peace. Be well. Keep sticks in your hand. Stay loose. Don't get caught up in too much social media where you're like losing your brains. Remember, it's all about you. That is the wall of illusion. And I think that sometimes is a little bit overwhelming when you do too much of that. So,
well, thank you, Bruce. I guess
thanks,
we're
Jeff.
out.
Yeah.
Give me the word. Okay. Everybody, thank you for coming in. You guys are great. We'll see you next time. Peace.